the camping ban creates more violence, indignity, and insecurity for homeless people. Can you commit to humane resources for the homeless citizens of Boston?
I will just also make sure I'm kind of framing this for everyone in terms of the actions to date. I think this question is about some of the actions that we've taken around what's known in Boston as Mass and Cass, the intersection of Mass Ave and Melia Cass Boulevard, where it had been the most visible concentration of residents who were experiencing substance use, often mental health challenges, and homelessness. And when I had stepped into this role, it was at that point 7 years since the Long Island Bridge had been taken down, and therefore the region, New England region's largest concentration of shelter beds and recovery beds, all of a sudden dismantled and kind of scattered in different places in the city, but some of it not restored to the numbers that they were at on the island. And in that time, by the time we started, there were nearly 200 residents who were living in tents and fortified encampments in that area of the city. Our first action was to really understand directly from those residents what their needs were. And sometimes you hear people say, well, people who are living on the street just want to be on the street. They don't want to go inside. But when you actually ask people, everyone wants somewhere warm and safe to be inside. But it's often that the existing shelter system didn't provide that and wasn't accessible because of past experiences in congregate spaces where belongings were stolen, or people had experienced violence in that shelter system, or that for particular communities like couples, there was no appropriate space because there are often single gender shelters that are available in that system, or no storage for private for personal belongings or other structural ways that it wasn't meeting people's needs. And so we worked to create housing that would reflect and would meet more of those needs. Specific housing, low threshold housing for couples, specific housing that included medical supports 24 hours a day. And we saw now at this point hundreds of residents move forward on their path to recovery with this individualized housing. We have since now, in the 2-3 years that our administration has been really learning from and talking to the providers and residents who formerly lived in the encampments, we heard that public safety was a big issue as well, to the point where even the providers who are on the ground every day had said, this is an unsustainable situation to be in, and we need to be able to have more guarantee of safety and health. And so the ordinance to require that if a tent is, if a shelter space is available, that the tent cannot be set up, it is meant to really ensure that the city's resources are going to actually serving people in need, rather than maintaining a status quo that had become untenable in terms of public health, safety, and the recovery of individuals. And so we are now able to deploy our mobile outreach units to any neighborhood in the city, rather than just being in one part of the city trying to maintain and sustain a semblance of safety. It has really been able to expand our outreach and expand our connection point for individuals who are in need of services to the providers much more effectively. And so we will continue to do that, but our approach has always been housing, services, recovery, and healthcare wrapped around an outreach model. And we believe that what has happened since this policy has gone into effect has actually been much more effective for delivering all of those services than the situation we had before.
We also have a whole group of questions around migrants, immigrants, and refugees. Essentially, what can we do as a city and as residents to better support these incoming immigrants and refugees?
It's very, very difficult when I think about a challenge, I'm always trying to understand what we can do immediately, but also what is the bigger picture or longer term set of steps that can change the dynamic that we're in, because it often feels in many of the challenges that we're facing across the city, that once you get into a pattern of just treading water on a certain situation, a tremendous amount of resources can go into something, but then the very next day or the very next month, it feels like you're back to square one. And with the challenge around mass and cast, that had been a little bit of the dynamic that we were hoping to change with the new approach. And similarly, here it feels, I talk to mayors across the country all the time, the number of families who are arriving in need of housing and shelter and services, who just want the ability to take care of their kids and be safe and be part of a community. It's the same stories that any of our families had as they first either came to this country or to the city. And Boston is a city that has always been that safe harbor to help people get on their feet and then contribute to our community. But the pace at which we are seeing new families arrive is significant when it comes to the resources that are necessary to provide adequate supports. And so, as the governor has been saying, there are changes at the federal level that need to happen. We see an immigration system where people are legally entering the country in order to seek the approvals to be able to work and live and stay in the country. But because of the backlog and because of the gap in resources that are available, the dates that they're given that they'll finally hear back on whether they were able to get those approvals are a year or even sometimes 2 years into the future, with no plan in the meantime of how to support yourself. And so there's been a lot of advocacy from incredible groups here in Boston up to the federal government and with the governor and her team to try to shorten those time frames. All I hear from any of the families that I'm meeting is, tell us how we are able to work. We just want to contribute and take care of our families. And as we've been able to get the federal government to shorten those time frames, some of the work authorization time frames now guaranteed to be 30 days or less of response time, that has made a huge difference in how our shelter system can be effectively utilized, because people come, they need to get on their feet, they fill out the paperwork, get approved, and then once they're working, they are then a resident, giving back and paying taxes and filling the jobs that we all all benefit from being filled anyway. And so I think there are 2 points I want to make on this. One is that the more that we can find ways with every level of government to make our immigration system more responsive and humane about how families are treated when they are just going through the channels that are available, the more that actually translates into the city and state being able to serve these families. The second is that ultimately in Boston, it is again a housing issue. Every city benefits from an influx of new residents who want to work, contribute, grow a community, and we are a city where almost a third of our residents were not born in the United States. That has made us who we are, and that has made us the incredible diverse community that we celebrate. We only want to add to that. However, when housing is so tight, when our wait list for public housing of residents who have lived here for many, many years is already tens of thousands of people long, we desperately need more housing in order to tap into the benefit of newly arrived families and individuals. And so ultimately it comes back down to the zoning code and permitting reform and how every community can do their part to produce more housing.
Until we get that additional housing, though, we did have questions about the high cost of rent. And you didn't mention a rent cap, capping the increase of rents in your State of the City this year. Is that something you're still thinking about?
It is a proposal that, in terms of where the city can take action and where we have to sort of wait and ask for other levels of government to take action. The city has already, we conducted a year-long process around analyzing best practices, developed a policy that would be ideal for Boston, that would stop egregious rent hikes that are of the scale that end up displacing residents and uprooting our students from our schools, and while also ensuring that we could have a thriving market for new housing to be produced. That proposal is up at the State House. It was passed by the City Council 11-2 last year, and that is the extent to which we can take action at the local level. It is now, given the structures of how Massachusetts government works, that kind of sign-off would need state legislative approval and the governor's sign-off in order to become law. And so we remain supportive, and I firmly believe that this is necessary for Boston as we produce more housing to just stem displacement in this. Otherwise, we will be a changed city by the time we even get to the point where we're able to think about welcoming everyone.
I'm going to try and cram a few more subjects in. Lots of questions about the MBTA, which you probably expect. Back in September, you told our own Radio Boston that you ranked your concern over the state of the MBTA at a 4.8 out of 5. And you said then that you were encouraged by the work that Governor Healy and the T's general manager were doing to improve things. Since then, you've appointed a new representative to the MBTA board of directors, but we've also seen a number of service delays and just so many. So how are you feeling now?
At this moment, I think it's still very, okay, let me take a step back. In terms of all of the issues that I hear about that kind of flow together into the future of our city, right? What I hear employers saying, what I hear residents saying, what I hear students saying, families, the MBTA is threaded through all of that. It's what will determine whether our downtown is active or not from workers wanting to come back in person. It's what will determine whether we can add as much housing as we are hoping in certain neighborhoods, because we don't know if the capacity for public transit to then get other places will be there. It is central to our climate planning, to our congestion management. It's underlying almost every issue that we're talking about. So from that sort of urgency perspective, I'm still where I was in terms of this needs to be our focus as a region. From a confidence perspective, I am feeling much, much better about the direction of the MBTA. General Manager Phil Eng is incredible. We are so lucky that he agreed to come here, and he's the first general manager in a long time for the MBTA that comes from decades of transportation management. Every conversation I've had with him about this particular need or a challenge that we're experiencing here, he has just a wealth of reference points to say, well, actually, I remember in New York, something similar to that came up, and here's how we creatively solve that, or here's what I know we can do, here's what I need to get back to you on. And we are seeing steady progress in resolution of slow zones. We are seeing an approach that is finally proactive rather than try to stretch the changes and improvements out however many years into the future, because we were only willing to close down on the weekends, and therefore it was 3 hours of setup for 2 hours of work and then 3 hours of takedown. It's painful, but having a commitment to just getting it done over a one stretch at a time is going to speed up the fixing the slow zones more than anything else that could happen. They've also made a lot of progress when it comes to staffing and filling the vacancies that had accumulated over many years. And so they are on a good plan in terms of just trying to dig out. It's going to take more resources than they have now, and it's going to take sustained focus and prioritization. I've been trying to really understand every part of the system myself. I'm very familiar with the Orange Line, living where I do, but I've started a practice now of a couple times a week I will go to commute with a resident from wherever they're starting their day in Boston to wherever they're starting their job or school or wherever their day, whatever they're doing for the day. And that has given me a view of not just all different parts of our system and where they're falling short. Sometimes it's very easy, small fixes that would make a big difference, but it's also giving a sense of where we're actually doing okay in the public transit system. And so it's my Commute With Me series where I try to commute with all different residents, and we now are, after every commute I try to put out a little summary. I film just on my phone what the experience was like and what we went through and that particular commuter's suggestions and recommendations for the MBTA, so I'm trying to do my part as well of generating a whole list of things for Phil and the team to respond to every week.
I'm sorry, I've missed that. I mean, have you been left kind of just waiting with one of these people?
So I've probably done like 7 or 8 so far. They're posted on our social media platform, so you can check out all the different routes that we've taken. Done a lot of bus, some blue line. I think I've been on every single line so far. Maybe not the green line, every other line so far. And no, the green line was shut down that day that I was going to. I was supposed to, but we didn't get to go on. And what has stuck out the most is that I will ask everyone at some point during our commute, how long does this usually take, so I can get a benchmark of how we're doing on that day. And nobody ever can say what the usual experience is, because it is completely unpredictable. Sometimes it is great and you feel so lucky, and sometimes you predictably have something unpredictable happen. It is to that level of feeling like anything goes when you take that commute into your hands. So I think it's a showcase of all of the important ways that people are contributing to our city, working as teachers or in healthcare or as researchers or at Converse as a data engineer was the most recent commute that I did, but also how their lives are dependent on and rely on the choices that we make as a general public and how we prioritize and invest in public transportation.
I want to wrap by looking ahead, and about a year from now, you'll probably, if you're going to do it, you're going to be campaigning for reelection, but you haven't said if you're going to run for reelection. I was wondering if you might want to say that, and then if not, why not say it?
Okay, no one will share this, right? If I say so I will say that this is true. I mean, I feel lucky every single day to wake up and get to try to make a difference in the city that has made every difference in my life and my family's life, and that the team that I'm blessed to work alongside is just the most incredible people in the whole world. And we're working on trying to tackle the important, long-standing, often decades-long created systemic challenges that will take time to resolve as well. So many of the projects that we are working on extend far into the future. Every school building is a multi-year process. White Stadium already projecting into 2026. And so I hope to be able to make an announcement at some point about continuing to do this work. But you also have to understand that once an official proclamation of that kind is made, it completely changes your interactions with different members of the public or with family or this and that. And so it is a decision that needs an official vetting with my family and with others who are going to be in this. And I hope to be able to make that announcement at some other point when no one will tell anyone.
All right, fair enough. Mayor Michelle Wu, thank you so much. We really
Thank you.
Travel. I love them and it's the